I retired at 63 and bought a lake house in northern Minnesota so I could finally hear myself think. No traffic, no neighbors arguing through thin walls, just loons calling across the water at dusk. Then my daughter-in-law called and said, "Your son agreed that my parents are moving into your lake house. If you have a problem with it, sell the place and come back to Chicago." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. But I made sure that when they arrived, they'd find exactly what they deserved. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The closing papers spread across the attorney's desk like a promise finally kept. I signed each one carefully, the way I'd signed engineering documents for 37 years. My hand didn't shake. Margaret Chen, the real estate attorney, watched me with professional patience. "Congratulations, Mr. Hoffman. You're now the owner of one of the nicest properties on Lake Vermilion. $220,000. Every penny I'd saved during decades of 60-hour weeks, skipped vacations, and brown bag lunches eaten at my desk, while younger colleagues went to restaurants. All of it converted into a 3-bedroom cabin with a dock, a boathouse, and 2 acres of pine forest. Thank you." I shook her hand and collected the keys. They felt solid in my palm, substantial. The drive north from Duluth took 2 hours on roads that grew progressively narrower and more beautiful. Highway became county road. County road became gravel. Cell service dropped from 4 bars to 2 to 1 flickering signal. I stopped at a bait shop that also sold groceries and picked up coffee, eggs, bread, and butter. The woman at the register asked if I was visiting. "Living," I said. She smiled like I'd passed some kind of test. "You'll love it up here. Quiet as a church." The final mile wound through forest, so dense the afternoon sun came through in scattered coins of light. When the lake appeared through the trees, I pulled over and cut the engine. A great blue heron stood motionless at the water's edge, patient as a statue. As I watched, it struck the surface and came up with a fish glinting silver in its beak. I sat there for 5 minutes, just breathing. No jackhammers, no car alarms, no shouting from the apartment upstairs. Just wind in the pines and water lapping against the shore. The cabin exceeded the photos. Cedar logs weathered to silver, stone fireplace climbing the north wall, wide windows facing the lake, 3 bedrooms, which seemed excessive for a man alone. But the extra space felt like luxury after decades in cramped city apartments. I unpacked methodically, the way I'd approached every project in my career. Tools arranged on the pegboard in the garage. Hammer, wrenches, socket set, each in its designated position. Books organized on the built-in shelves by subject. History, engineering references, the novels I'd promised myself I'd read when I had time. Coffee maker positioned on the kitchen counter where morning light would reach it first. By sunset, everything was in place. I made coffee too late in the day, not caring, and carried it to the Adirondack chair on the dock. The heron was gone, but a family of loons had appeared, their calls echoing across the water like questions and answers. I called my son Daniel. "Dad." His voice came through warm despite the weak signal. "Did you close on the place?" "Sitting on my dock right now, watching loons." "That's fantastic. You earned this. 37 years, Dad. You earned every square foot." Something loosened in my chest. Daniel understood. He'd watched me work through his childhood, miss his baseball games, fall asleep at the dinner table. He knew what this place represented. "How's everything in Chicago?" I asked. Good. Busy. Megan's parents have been staying with us while their condo gets renovated. It's been," he paused, "crowded. I can imagine. How much longer?" "Supposed to be another month. But there's always delays, you know." We talked for another 10 minutes. His job at the marketing firm, my plans for the dock repairs, safe subjects. When we hung up, I watched the last light fade from the sky and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The phone rang the next evening. I was on the dock again, coffee in hand, watching the sunset paint the water orange and gold. The caller ID showed Megan's number. "Hello, Megan." "Frank." My daughter-in-law's voice had the clipped tone she used when she wanted something. I'd learned that tone over the 7 years she'd been married to Daniel. I need to discuss something with you. Of course. My parents can't stay in our apartment anymore. It's too small, and the renovation is taking longer than expected. Daniel and I talked about it, and we think the best solution is for them to stay at your lake house for a few months. I set down my coffee very carefully. I'm sorry? It's perfect, really. You have 3 bedrooms. They need somewhere quiet to stay. And honestly, Frank, you're one person rattling around in all that space. It makes sense. Megan, I just bought this place yesterday. My parents are stressed. My father has blood pressure issues. They need peaceful surroundings, and that cabin is sitting there empty most of the time anyway. It's not empty. I live here. You know what I mean. Impatience sharpened her words. You don't need 3 bedrooms. This is about family helping family. There it was, that phrase I'd heard too many times. Family helping family, which somehow always meant me helping everyone else. Did Daniel agree to this? Daniel understands that sometimes we have to make sacrifices, unlike some people. I looked out at the lake, at the loons gliding across the darkening water. 24 hours. I'd had exactly 24 hours of peace. When are they planning to arrive? Friday. I'll text you their flight information. You can pick them up in Duluth. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a warning. Don't make this difficult, Frank. My parents are good people. They deserve a nice place to stay. If you have a problem with it, sell the cabin and come back to Chicago, where you can be useful. The line went dead. I sat there as darkness fell over the lake, listening to the loons call back and forth. My hands weren't shaking. They wanted to, but I wouldn't let them. 37 years I'd been the accommodating one, the one who said yes when he meant no, the one who swallowed resentment to keep the peace, the one who let other people's emergencies become his problems. Not this time. I went inside and sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a mechanical pencil, the same tools I'd used for decades of structural calculations. But this time, I wasn't designing a building. I was designing something else entirely. Morning found me still at the table, surrounded by notes and diagrams. I'd slept 2 hours, maybe 3, but my mind was clear. The coffee pot was empty. I made more. The first call I made was to the Lake Vermilion Township office. I just purchased property on Anchor Point Road, I told the clerk. I want to understand the regulations around short-term rentals and guest occupancy. She explained the township rules patiently. I took detailed notes. When she mentioned the requirement for property owners to register any occupants staying longer than 30 days, I asked her to repeat the exact wording. It's a liability and safety measure, she said. We need to know who's on the properties in case of emergency. Fire, medical, that sort of thing. Makes perfect sense. Thank you. Next, I called my insurance agent in Chicago. Jack, I need to discuss the policy on my new lake house. Specifically, the liability coverage and any exclusions related to unregistered occupants. Jack walked me through the details. My policy covered me as the sole resident. Any additional occupants required notification and potential premium adjustment. Unauthorized long-term guests could void my coverage entirely. Why do you ask? Jack said. You planning on having people stay with you? Just being thorough. You know me. That I do. 30 years of policies. Never a single claim. You're the most careful man I know. I smiled at that. Tuesday, I drove to Tower, the nearest town of any size, and visited the hardware store. The owner, a weathered man named Bill, helped me find what I needed. Wildlife cameras, I explained. I want to monitor the deer activity near my property. Smart thinking. Lots of folks use these for security too. Motion-activated, night vision, sends pictures right to your phone. I bought 3 cameras and a motion-activated security light for the driveway. Total cost, $412. I paid cash and got a receipt. Wednesday, I installed the cameras myself. One covering the driveway approach, hidden in the branches of a pine tree. One facing the front door, mounted under the eave of the garage. One pointing at the dock and boathouse. I tested each one, checked the cellular connectivity, adjusted angles until the coverage was complete. The engineering part of my brain found satisfaction in the precision, clear sight lines, overlapping fields of view, documented timestamps on every recording. Thursday, I made one more trip to town, this time to the office of Peterson and Associates, the only law firm in the area. Sarah Peterson was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the direct manner of someone who'd grown up in this part of the country. I explained my situation without emotion, presenting facts. So your daughter-in-law informed you that her parents are arriving tomorrow to stay in your home. You never agreed to this arrangement. She's essentially told you to accept it or sell your property. That's correct. And you want to know your legal options. I want to protect my home and my rights, whatever that requires. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Mr. Hoffman, you have every legal right to refuse entry to anyone you choose. This is your property. You have no obligation to house your son's in-laws. What if they arrive anyway? If they refuse to leave after you've clearly asked them to, that's trespassing. You can call the sheriff. I nodded slowly. I want to handle this carefully. My son is caught in the middle. I don't want to damage my relationship with him. I understand. Here's what I'd recommend. She pulled out a legal pad. Document everything, every conversation, every message. If they do arrive and refuse to leave, give them written notice. Make it clear and polite, but firm. If they still won't go, then we escalate. I hired her on the spot, $2,000 retainer, which I paid by check. On the drive back to the cabin, I thought about Daniel, my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, watched graduate from college. He wasn't the problem here. Megan was the problem. And perhaps I was too, for spending 7 years letting her push boundaries without consequence. That evening, I sat on the dock and watched the sun set. The loons were back, their calls mixing with the wind in the pines. Tomorrow, everything would change. I was ready. Friday morning arrived cool and overcast. I woke at 5, made coffee, and watched the mist rise off the lake. My phone showed the text Megan had sent the night before. Mom and Dad landing Duluth, 11:30. Be there. I didn't reply. At 11:30, I was on my dock, reading a history of the Minnesota Iron Range. At 11:45, my phone buzzed with a call from Megan. I let it go to voicemail. At 12:15, a text. Where are you? They're waiting at the airport. I continued reading. At 12:47, Daniel called. I answered. Dad, what's going on? Megan's parents are stranded at the Duluth airport. She said you were supposed to pick them up. I never agreed to pick them up. I never agreed to let them stay here. Silence. Then, Dad, Megan said. Megan informed me. Daniel. She didn't ask. There's a difference. They're family, Dad. No, son. They're her family. I met them at your wedding and twice at Christmas. I don't know these people, and I certainly didn't buy a retirement home so strangers could move into it. More silence. I could hear Megan's voice in the background, sharp and demanding. Dad, please. Just for a few weeks while... I said no, Daniel. That's my answer. I'm sorry this puts you in an uncomfortable position, but I'm not responsible for promises Megan made without my consent. I heard him sigh, heard the exhaustion in it. I'll talk to her. We'll figure something out. I hope you will. Give my best to her parents. Tell them I recommend the Holiday Inn in Duluth. It's very comfortable. I ended the call and went back to my book. But I couldn't concentrate. I set it down and walked the property, checking the cameras, examining the perimeter, thinking. 2 hours later, the camera at the driveway entrance sent an alert to my phone. A rental car was coming up the road. I watched the feed as the car emerged from the trees and stopped in front of the cabin. 2 people got out, a man and woman in their late 60s. Gerald and Vivian Wu, Megan's parents. I'd spoken to them perhaps a dozen times, total, in 7 years. Gerald looked around with an expression I recognized. Appraisal? Calculation. How much is this worth? Vivian made a face at the trees, swatting at something in the air. A mosquito, probably. I met them on the porch. Gerald, Vivian. This is a surprise. Frank. Gerald's handshake was brief and businesslike, Megan said you'd be here. Sorry about the miscommunication at the airport. We rented a car. There was no miscommunication. I never agreed to pick you up, and I never agreed to have you stay here. Vivian's face went tight. Excuse me? Megan said. Megan doesn't own this property. I do. And I'm telling you that you're not staying here. Gerald stepped forward, his voice shifting to a tone I'd heard before. The tone of a man used to getting what he wanted. Now look, Frank, let's be reasonable. We're family. Megan and Daniel think this is the best solution. And frankly, you're one person in a 3-bedroom house. It's selfish to refuse. I'm selfish. I let the word sit there. I worked 37 years for this place. I ate lunch at my desk while my colleagues went to restaurants. I missed my son's baseball games and his school plays. I earned this house with decades of sacrifice. And you're calling me selfish for not handing it over to people I barely know? We're not asking for a handout, Vivian said. We're family. You're strangers who happen to be related to my daughter-in-law. That's not the same thing. Gerald's face reddened. This is ridiculous. Megan said you'd be difficult, but I didn't believe her. And yet, here we are. I crossed my arms. There's a very nice resort in Ely, about 40 minutes from here. I recommend it. Now, please leave my property. We're not leaving, Gerald said. We drove 3 hours from Duluth. We're tired. And we have just as much right to be here as you do. No, you don't. I own this property. You don't. And if you refuse to leave, I'll call the sheriff and have you removed for trespassing. Vivian grabbed Gerald's arm. Let's just go. We'll call Megan. She'll sort this out. They retreated to their rental car, still arguing with each other. I watched them drive away, then went inside and reviewed the camera footage. Every moment recorded, every word captured. The phone started ringing within the hour. First Megan, furious. I let it go to voicemail. Then Daniel, pleading. I let that one go too. Then Megan again, leaving a message that was more threat than conversation. You're going to regret this, Frank. You think you can just humiliate my parents and there won't be consequences? We'll see about that. Daniel and I are discussing our options. I saved the message. That night, I sat on the dock with bourbon instead of coffee. The loons called across the water, and I thought about what was coming. Megan wasn't the type to let this go. She'd escalate. She always escalated. I needed to be ready. 3 weeks passed. Quiet weeks, which I knew were deceptive. I spent them preparing, the way I'd prepared for complex engineering projects. Research, documentation, contingency planning. I learned that Gerald Wu had declared bankruptcy 2 years ago, a failed restaurant investment, compounded by credit card debt. The condo renovation Megan had mentioned wasn't really a renovation at all. They'd lost the condo to foreclosure and had been living with Megan and Daniel for 4 months. Not the few weeks she'd claimed. I learned this from a private investigator in Minneapolis, Ellen Marsh, recommended by my attorney, Sarah. $300 for a basic background check, but worth every penny. There's more, Ellen said during our phone call. Gerald Wu has a civil judgment against him for $80,000, debt from the restaurant failure. There are also some concerning financial transactions involving your son and daughter-in-law's joint accounts. My stomach tightened. What kind of transactions? Large transfers to accounts in Gerald's name, totaling about $45,000 over the past 8 months. $45,000. Money that should have been going to Daniel's savings, his retirement, his future. Can you document this? Already done. I'll send you the report. The report arrived by secure email the next day. I printed it and added it to the folder I was building. Evidence, documentation, the truth, laid out in bank records and court filings. A week later, Daniel called. He sounded exhausted. Dad, I need to talk to you. Can I come up this weekend? Just me. Of course, son. I'd love to see you. He arrived Saturday afternoon, driving up alone in his sedan. When he got out of the car, I saw how much weight he'd lost, how deep the circles under his eyes had gotten. We sat on the dock with beers, watching the sunlight sparkle on the water. Megan wants me to convince you to let her parents stay here, he said finally. That's why she let me come alone. She thinks I can talk you into it. And what do you want, Daniel? He was quiet for a long moment. I want my wife to stop crying every night. I want her parents to find somewhere to live that isn't our guest room. I want to stop feeling like I'm being pulled apart. That sounds hard. It is. He took a long drink of his beer. Dad, why did you say no? I mean, I understand it's your house, but 3 bedrooms, 1 person. It seemed like it could work. I chose my next words carefully. Daniel, how much money have you given to Megan's parents in the past year? He went still. Because I know it's at least $45,000. That's what a private investigator found in bank records. You hired an investigator? On my family? On people who were trying to move into my home without my permission? Yes. And what I found concerns me. He stood up, walked to the edge of the dock, stood there with his back to me. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I didn't want to, at first. But Gerald kept asking, and Megan kept crying, and He trailed off. When does it end, Daniel? I don't know. Here's what I think. I stood and joined him at the dock's edge. I think Megan's parents lost their condo because Gerald made bad decisions. I think they've been living with you for months, not weeks. I think they keep asking for money because they've learned that asking works. And I think Megan has been manipulating you to enable them. That's not fair. Isn't it? I pulled the investigator's report from my pocket. Gerald declared bankruptcy 2 years ago. He has an $80,000 judgment against him. The condo wasn't being renovated, Daniel. It was foreclosed. Daniel took the report with shaking hands. He read it standing there on the dock while the sun moved lower in the sky. She lied to me, he said finally. Megan told me it was temporary. She said the renovation was taking longer than expected. She never said, I know. I gave them $45,000, Dad. That was supposed to be our down payment. We were going to buy a house. His voice broke. How could she do this? I put my hand on his shoulder. I don't know, son. But now you know the truth. What you do with it is up to you. He stayed through Sunday. We didn't talk about Megan or her parents. We fished, cooked steaks on the grill, watched the loons. Simple things. Father and son things. When he left Sunday evening, he hugged me for a long time. Thank you, he said, for telling me the truth. I love you, son. Whatever happens, remember that. I watched his taillights disappear down the driveway. Then I went inside and waited for what I knew was coming. Megan's retaliation began 10 days later. The first sign was a letter from the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Someone had filed a vulnerable adult report alleging that I was living in unsafe conditions and showing signs of cognitive decline. The letter requested a home visit to assess my situation. I called Sarah Peterson immediately. This is a common tactic, she said. Family members sometimes weaponize social services to pressure elderly relatives. It's called fraudulent reporting. If the allegations are false, the investigation will show that. And if they keep filing reports, then we document the pattern and pursue legal action for harassment. Stay calm, Frank. You're clearly competent, and your home is obviously well maintained. This will go nowhere. The social worker arrived 2 days later. A young woman named Jennifer, professional and polite. I gave her a tour of the cabin, showed her my organized files, made coffee, and answered her questions clearly. Mr. Hoffman, I have to ask, is there any family conflict that might have prompted this report? My daughter-in-law wanted her parents to live in my home without my permission. I refused. She threatened consequences. I believe this report is one of those consequences. Jennifer took notes. I appreciate your honesty. That's consistent with the pattern I'm seeing in the report itself. What pattern? The allegations are very specific in ways that suggest coaching. They mention exact details about your daily routine that someone would only know if they'd visited recently. But the report was filed anonymously from a Chicago IP address. I smiled grimly. Megan had overplayed her hand. The investigation closed a week later. Unfounded. But I knew she wouldn't stop. The next attack came through Daniel. He called me 3 weeks after his visit, and his voice sounded wrong, flat, rehearsed. Dad, I've been thinking. Maybe you should consider selling the lake house. It's a lot for one person to maintain, and Megan is worried about your health up there alone. Megan is worried about my health? We both are. It's isolated. If something happened... Daniel, are you reading from a script? Silence. Then, almost a whisper. She's standing right here. I can't. I understand. Tell her I got the message. And tell her that my health is excellent, my home is exactly what I want, and I have no intention of selling. Goodbye, son. I ended the call and sat down at the kitchen table, feeling the weight of what was happening. Megan wasn't just trying to get my property. She was using my son as a weapon against me, and Daniel was too deep in it to see a way out. The next morning, I called Ellen Marsh again. I need more information, I said, about my daughter-in-law specifically, her financial situation, her employment history, anything you can find. This is escalating, Ellen observed. Yes, it is. The report arrived a week later. Megan had been fired from her marketing job 4 months ago. She hadn't told Daniel. She'd been withdrawing money from their joint accounts to maintain the illusion of income while actually funding her parents' lifestyle. The total now exceeded $60,000. I sat with that information for 3 days, trying to decide what to do. Telling Daniel would devastate him. Not telling him would allow the manipulation to continue. In the end, I chose truth. I always had. I sent Daniel an email with the report attached. Subject line, "You deserve to know." The phone call came 6 hours later. "It's true," Daniel said. His voice was hollow. I confronted her. She admitted everything. The job, the money, the lies. She said she was trying to protect me from stress. "I'm sorry, son. She's been lying to me for months, Dad, about everything. And when I asked why she filed that report against you, she said you deserved it for embarrassing her parents. What are you going to do?" A long pause. "I don't know yet, but I needed to call you, to say, I'm sorry, for not believing you, for letting her use me against you. You have nothing to apologize for. You trusted your wife. That's what you were supposed to do. I trusted the wrong person. Then learn from it, and know that whatever you decide, I'm here." After we hung up, I poured myself a bourbon and walked to the dock. The evening was still and warm, the lake like glass. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals invisible from the ground. This wasn't what I'd wanted. I'd bought this place for peace, not for battle. But sometimes you have to fight to protect what matters. And Daniel mattered more than peace ever could. The divorce papers were filed 6 weeks later. Daniel called to tell me himself. I asked her to leave. She's staying with her parents at a motel in Schaumburg. Her attorney already contacted mine. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, better than I expected. It's like a weight lifted when I finally accepted what she was. Who she was." He paused. "I found more, Dad. After you sent that report, bank accounts I didn't know about, loans taken out in my name without my knowledge. It's going to take years to sort out. I'm sorry." "Don't be. You're the one who opened my eyes. If you hadn't stood your ground about the lake house, I might never have seen the truth." "Come up this weekend," I said. "Bring a fishing rod. Let's be father and son for a while." "I'd like that." Daniel arrived Friday evening, looking thinner but somehow stronger. The hunted look was gone from his eyes, replaced by something like determination. We spent Saturday on the lake, catching walleye and smallmouth bass, not talking about lawyers or divorce proceedings or the mess Megan had made of his finances. Just fishing, just being together. That evening, as we grilled our catch on the deck, Daniel said something that surprised me. "I want to move up here." "To Minnesota?" "Not here exactly, but somewhere nearby. There's a marketing firm in Duluth that's hiring. I already had a phone interview." He looked out at the lake. "I need a fresh start, Dad. Away from Chicago, away from everything that reminds me of her." "What about the divorce proceedings?" "My attorney says I can handle most of it remotely. The court appearances I'll have to travel for, but that's doable." He turned to face me. "What do you think?" "I think," I said carefully, "that you're a grown man who can make his own decisions, and I think having you nearby would make me very happy." His smile was the first genuine one I'd seen from him in months. 2 months later, Daniel took the job in Duluth and found an apartment with a view of Lake Superior. He drove up to the cabin most weekends, sometimes to fish, sometimes just to sit on the dock and talk. The divorce finalized in December. Megan got the furniture and her parents' outstanding demands for more money. Daniel got his freedom and what remained of his savings. which wasn't much. The forensic accountant uncovered another $30,000 in hidden debt that Megan had accumulated. She was planning to put a lien on your lake house, Daniel told me during one of his visits. Her attorney had paperwork claiming that money she'd given you entitled her to an ownership stake. Money she gave me? She was going to claim that some of the funds she transferred to her parents were actually loans to you. It was completely fabricated, but her attorney was willing to file it anyway. I thought about that for a long moment. What stopped her? I told her that if she tried anything against you, I'd testify about all the fraud I'd discovered. Every hidden account, every forged signature, everything. Her attorney dropped her as a client the next day. You protected me. You protected me first, by telling me the truth when it would have been easier to stay out of it. Daniel looked at me with clear eyes. That's what family does, Dad. Real family. Spring came slowly to Lake Vermilion. The ice melted in April, and by May the loons were back, filling the evenings with their haunting calls. I was on the dock one Saturday morning when Daniel's car came up the driveway. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman got out of the passenger side, tall, dark-haired, with an easy smile. Dad, Daniel said as they walked toward me, this is Rebecca. We work together at the firm. I've told her a lot about you. Rebecca shook my hand firmly. He says you're the most stubborn man in Minnesota. He means it as a compliment. I hope so. I found myself smiling. Are you a fisherman, Rebecca? Never tried it, but I'm willing to learn. We spent the day on the lake, the three of us. Daniel showed Rebecca how to cast, how to read the water for signs of fish, how to be patient. She wasn't particularly good at it, but she laughed at her mistakes and tried again. I liked that about her. That evening, while Rebecca explored the shoreline, Daniel sat next to me on the dock. What do you think? I think she's nothing like Megan. No, he agreed. She's not. Then I think you should keep seeing her. He laughed. Actually laughed. A sound I'd almost forgotten. Thanks, Dad. For what? For everything. For this place. For standing your ground when everyone was telling you to give in. For caring enough to find out the truth and show it to me, even when it hurt. That's what fathers do. Not all of them. He looked at me. I want to be more like you. The kind of person who does what's right even when it's hard. I put my hand on his shoulder. You already are, son. You already are. A year passed. Daniel and Rebecca got engaged. They bought a small house in Duluth with a yard for the dog they were planning to adopt. I attended the closing, sitting quietly in the corner while they signed their papers, feeling the same pride I'd felt watching him graduate from college. The wedding was small, held at a restaurant overlooking Lake Superior on a clear September day. 50 people, mostly Rebecca's family and Daniel's friends from work. I gave a toast that made everyone laugh and Rebecca cry. Megan wasn't there, of course. She'd remarried quickly, to a man she met online. Gerald and Vivian moved in with them. I heard through Daniel's attorney that the new husband had money. He doesn't know what he's getting into, Daniel said when he told me. Maybe not. Or maybe he does and thinks he can handle it. No one can handle them, Dad. They take and take until there's nothing left. Then I hope he has good lawyers. That autumn, I stood on my dock in the early morning, watching mist rise from the lake. The trees were turning, red and gold and orange reflected in the still water. A bald eagle soared overhead, heading toward the far shore. I thought about the year I'd had, the battle I'd fought to keep this place, the pain of watching my son's marriage collapse, the joy of watching him rebuild his life with someone who actually loved him. None of it had gone the way I'd planned. I'd bought this cabin for solitude, for peace, for the quiet I'd earned through decades of work. Instead, I'd gotten conflict, drama, and a family crisis that threatened everything I'd built. But I'd also gotten something I hadn't expected. A closer relationship with my son. The knowledge that he respected me, that my example had taught him something about integrity and courage. A front row seat to his recovery and his new beginning. Maybe peace isn't about being alone. Maybe it's about being with the right people. Daniel and Rebecca drove up that weekend, their new dog bouncing in the back seat. We took the boat out and fished until sunset, then grilled walleye on the deck while the loons called across the water. We've been talking, Rebecca said as we ate. About the future, about family. I looked at Daniel. He was smiling. We're hoping to have kids someday, he said. And when we do, I want them to know this place, to spend summers here, learning to fish, watching the eagles. I want them to know their grandfather. I had to look away for a moment, out at the lake, at the last light fading behind the pines. I'd like that, I said. I'd like that very much. Rebecca reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you, she said, for raising a man worth loving. After they left Sunday evening, I sat on the dock until full dark, listening to the loons, watching the stars emerge one by one. 37 years of work had bought me this cabin, but what I'd built in the years since was worth more. A son who trusted me, a future daughter-in-law who respected me, the promise of grandchildren who would learn to love this place the way I did. Megan and her parents had tried to take it all away. They'd used manipulation, lies, legal threats, everything they could think of. And they'd failed, not because I was smarter or richer or more powerful, but because I'd refused to compromise my principles. I'd said no when everyone expected yes. I'd chosen truth over easy lies. I'd protected what mattered, even when it cost me peace. And in the end, I'd gained more than I'd ever imagined. I stood up, stretched my old bones, and walked inside to call my son, just to say goodnight, just because I could. The cabin door closed softly behind me. Outside, the loons fell silent, and the lake settled into the deep stillness of a Minnesota night. Inside, I picked up the phone and dialed Daniel's number. Hey, Dad, he answered on the second ring. Everything okay? Everything's perfect, son. I just wanted to hear your voice. And it was true. For the first time in longer than I could remember, everything really was perfect. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.